Welcome everyone to lesson 5 in our trial and error, a real-world guide to trial practice. Today we're going to be talking about cross-examination. Cross-examination is where you make the donuts. And I don't know if anyone has seen the Dunkin' Donuts commercials from the late 80s and early 90s, but it's this guy gets up every day and he goes, make the donuts, and there's a whole thing, and I think it's still in their boxes or something. But what it really means is this is going to work. This is absolutely where you win your case. If you cannot do an effective cross, you can't win. Because if the jury believes everything the state's witnesses say, they should win. So cross is, I believe, the most important part of a trial. I don't believe you can win a trial without an effective cross, except in some very extreme circumstances where the witness just doesn't say anything they need to, and then you get a verdict at halftime. Other than that, cross is really the main job we have to do in trial. Jury selection is important because you need to have a good jury to start with. Closing arguments where you bring it all together, but cross is where you really get what you need, especially from the defense perspective, because our directs are not guaranteed that we're going to have one, and we have to undercut those state case in cross-examination. So when we are doing that, we think about what's the main goal of cross-examination, right? Cross-examination is not just like direct. It's not doing your own direct of the state's witness. It is not repeating what they've said on direct. Cross-examination is about making points. When we talked about direct examination, it was getting information that you need to support your case. Cross-examination is all about making points. So you have to go into your cross with a plan, because you have to know what you need, how you're going to get it, and when to get out. Those are the 3 most important things. Because if you don't know why you're cross-examining this witness, you're probably better off not cross-examining. If you don't know how to get what you need from this witness, you're not going to do an effective cross-examination. And if you don't know when to get out, you're going to go too long, ask the one question too many, and you're going to be sunk. So planning and preparation is different on cross than direct, where you can script out. Cross is more about a strategic plan of attack. The great thing about that attack plan is you have a weapon, something that no other lawyer in the courtroom gets to have, that only you get in your pocket, and that is the leading question. That's the ability to ask a question where you're actually telling the answer within the question. You saw the blue car, correct? There's only one answer. That's not really a question, it's a statement with a question mark at the end. That's leading. That's what we want to do. Open-ended questions give your witness room to breathe, to go, to move, and are required on direct examination. As we talked about in direct, your client is the show. You fade into the background. You are the chorus. You are the supporting character. You're Reese Witherspoon's best friend in all the movies, whatever. Cross, you are the star. You are Matthew McConaughey. You are like classic golden era Hollywood, up front, center, big screen. It is all about you. Whereas direct, we pull back a little on our personality. We're not necessarily making comments on the evidence. Cross-examination is a show, and you're the star, because you're there to make your points, not what the witness wants to say, because what they want to say is that your client is guilty. You're there to make them say what you want. And there's ways to do that, because it's hard. This is an adverse witness. This is a witness that may not like you. Now, they mostly like me, but who doesn't like me, right? But they don't like you. They don't like your client. They don't like your job. They don't even know why you should be getting to do this. Obviously, this person did it. Otherwise, why would they be up there saying it? So So you have to shift that. And you shift it through your leading questions and asking questions that we know the answer to, or we know what the answer should be. The first thing you do, and most of our witnesses, a lot of them, will be law enforcement witnesses. And there we have another tool that is useful to us, the police report. These things we spend all this time reading over, our clients always want copies of. It's just been all this effort reading through these reports. But that momentous task now becomes your best friend, because the law enforcement cross-examination is very similar officer to officer, because you're trying to do the same thing. You have a report, and in that report, that officer put information. Now, for the most part, you may want all that information to be accurate, or at least close enough, in the sense that the officer is confined to that report. So with your law enforcement witnesses, the first thing you want to do, typically, is lock them into the report. And you would do this with expert witness as well. Anyone that generates paperwork. We're going to talk in a moment about how to utilize interviews, particularly of lay witnesses. But for most of your professional witnesses, doctors, experts, most, particularly law enforcement, they'll have a written report. So you're going to want to lock them into that. So usually you'll start your cross by doing so. On direct, the hope, I think, of most prosecutors is their officer won't have to refer to their report. They'll remember everything or know everything. The truth is, most officers, particularly patrol officers that we deal with, only know what's in their report because they've done 120 cases since that DUI stop. They've done 300 other DUIs. So they know what's in the report. How do they know it? Because it's in their report. That's it. And that is your biggest friend. So by the time you get to cross, they may have never referenced their report. They may be sitting up there reading from it, which you probably shouldn't allow. There's an objection for that. But you want to lock them in. So you start. You made a report in this case, correct? Yes. And what's the purpose of writing reports? That's an open-ended question, but I think it's an okay one because they're going to say, so I remember everything that happened. And you're trained how to write these reports, right? And you put everything that's important in this report. They may try and quibble with you, but use your question. Say, well, if you saw it at that time, it's so that you can remember it later, right? And it's important that you have that information for later. So you can do this a couple ways, lock them into it. But so there would be nothing that you saw that is important that wasn't in your report, right? Or is there anything, there's nothing you want to add to your report at this time, right? There's nothing that you think you got wrong in your report, right? By the time that they've done agreeing with you, going through just the creation of this document, you can even say, you've had training experience in the academy of how to write reports, didn't you? By the time you're done, they will agree that the entire universe exists in this one report. Now that you have that, they can't quibble with it. They can't modify from it. And if they do, you go right back to that report through impeachment, which we'll talk about in a moment. So lock them in. Lock them into a universe of their own creation. And then utilize that to either point out issues within the report, whether through things that are said in there that are inconsistent with their testimony, with other testimony, with the case theorem as a total, or by omission. Well, if this was important, you would have seen that. There were fingerprints, you would have put that was in there. If you saw my client driving 100 miles per hour, you would have put that in there, right? Now those facts can no longer be true, at least from the perspective of this witness, because it's not in the report. And then if they try and get outside that, they've already agreed with you that this is the world. And the moment they step out, now it looks like they're lying, like they're equivocating, and they very well may be, right? Or they're trying to fill in or say what the prosecutor wants them to say, not what happened. So you lock them into the reports. That'll allow you to control the universe and get into either the things that are in there that you like or things that aren't in there that are beneficial to you. Once you've locked them into that, still maintain that control of the questioning. Leading questions always. Questions you know the answer to, always. And keep it tight. And you'll get witnesses. Witnesses want to run. They want to just tell their story, law enforcement included. All witnesses just want to tell you what they know, get off the stand, go about their day. Don't let them do that, right? If you ask a question that's a simple yes or no question, they try and explain, it's all right to say, oh, sorry about that. I'm just looking for a yes or no question. Or, which I like to do with expert witnesses, listen, you're really smart. You're way better at this science stuff than me. I just, yes or no will really help me understand it because I'm stupid, right? Which is not that big of a stretch for me. But it helps to control the questioning. And it's always okay if the witness starts to go, you can interrupt and say, wait, right? Now, you have to let them answer the question to a degree, or else the court might get on you about that. But if they're going beyond the answer, right, stop it. Get them back. Control the answers just like you control the questions. Frame the conversation that you're having with them as a yes or no conversation. Typically, that's the best thing that works for us because we want yes or no answers. Leading questions lend themselves to yes or no. They do not lend themselves to explanation. They do not lend themselves to extrapolation. They do not lend themselves to intimidation. And I'm going to say modulation because I really want to keep that rhyme scheme going, but that doesn't really work. So use that. Because yes or no, because the moment you get that yes, the moment you get that no, that is a fact now in evidence. That is something you get to put in your closing bag for later and whip it out, take it out at the end to prove your case. Because then you could say, even the state's witness agreed that the car was red. Even the state's witness agreed that the other individual seemed intoxicated. Because you got that. That was an actual answer. This leads to another interesting conundrum of cross-examination. Because it is so important, because you do get in this dramatic flow of it, there is an inclination to try and win your case in cross-examination. Now, I'll be clear. What I said was you need cross-examination to win your case, but you don't win your case during that cross-examination. You do not need the Perry Mason, the Matlock, insert more relevant legal drama here moment where the witness just goes, you got me, it was me the whole time. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get an officer to admit, yeah, I lied. Yeah, I was wrong. Very rarely. You're not going to get them to say, nah, that guy actually didn't do it. I'm just here because that prosecutor told me I had to be. That's not going to happen. So don't try and push for that. You don't need to bring it all together. When you get the answer you need, when you've made the point you've needed to make, take it, put it in your bag, move on, or be done. I think it's a very good way to think about cross-examination for the most part is start with the idea of 3 points. What are 3 points I need to make from this witness? And as you do your case analysis and as you look through your various witnesses, it may only be 1 point. It may only be 2. If you can't think of a single point you can make, you probably should not do cross-examination on them, right? Because it lends itself to more harm than good. It's all right sometimes to have a witness that you don't actually disagree with anything they say, or more importantly, nothing they say hurts your case or theory. Just be like, no questions, Your Honor. Juries, I think, actually appreciate that, as opposed to having you needlessly question something. And if you don't have anything to say, you're going to be inclined to repeat direct examination. You don't want to do that. You don't want to make the state's case again, right? You don't want the direct so nice that you do it twice. You need to have a point, and once the point's made, get out. Now be adaptable. You may get in a good line that may yield more than you thought, but be careful because you are always better asking one question too few than one question too many. So make your points and get out. It's not your witness, they're not your friend, right? They don't like your client. I mean, they may like him in real life, but in the perspective of trial, in the confrontational nature of this practice, they're not on your side. So you have to get what you can and get out and then bring it together on closing argument. So we talked a little bit about utilizing impeachment in terms of the report, where you can impeach through omission, you can impeach through inconsistency, you can impeach with aspects that don't line up with what other witnesses say or that's. But impeachment in general is your friend and another one of your tools for cross-examination, because that's the ability to take an answer you know and get it in, even when a witness doesn't do what you need them to do. This can be more difficult with lay witnesses because they often don't write statements. But you may have an interview on body cam of them, or a statement they made to law enforcement that you may bring up. Impeachment is a wonderful exception to hearsay, generally. So you can utilize that. But where you're going to get a lot of materials is our interviews of these witnesses. Ideally, when you're doing your interview, you have a paralegal or an intern or someone else there that can take notes and be available if you need to call them in for impeachment. Never, I would say ever, interview a material witness alone, because then you get in a contest with them and say, hey, you told me that the car was red. And they're like, no, I didn't. And you just got to stand there and be like, oh, you can't do much about this. But if you have someone else there, you bring in your paralegal, you bring in your investigator, you bring in your best friend Sandy Jones, and they say, yeah, I was there. What did they say? I said that car was blue. How do you know that? Wrote it down right here. Right? You're going to lock them in that way. And then utilize it in the same manner as you use the police reports. Right? And you can coach them a little on it. You remember giving an interview with me, correct? And in that interview, we talked about what color the car was, right? Yes. And you told me it was blue, right? Now, by establishing that the thing already happened, that you have this item that could potentially undercut their position, they're going to be more inclined just to agree. So you have to establish what you have. With law enforcement, it's the reports. With the investigator, it could be their notes. With expert, it could be their findings. With witnesses, it could be everything from their statements to extrinsic materials, right? Former criminal convictions, things along those lines. That's why it's always helpful to have these things. So in thinking about impeachment and cross-examination, organization is very helpful. Yes?
With impeachment, how does it work procedurally? Like, once they say something that's not what you've heard before, to immediately, how does that work? I've never seen it.
No, there's two ways to do, I think there's two routes to an effective impeachment. So, if I ask you, tell me the car's red. What color was the car?
Car's red.
Okay, and then I'm looking at my notes and I was like, well, that's not what they said here. So then you move immediately towards your impeachment materials. So you previously gave a deposition in this case, didn't you? And at that time you were sworn in and had to tell the truth. Also, that deposition occurred closer in time to this incident, didn't it? And wouldn't your memory at that time be better than it would be today, right? Now, thinking back to that, what color did you say the car was? And they may hold and say, oh, it was red. Then you have an item. It's always helpful to have it in your hand, because then they're like, oh, that's something. And the jury's like, oh, that must be the secret answer. I say, you can do, then you can, permission to approach the witness. I'm giving you what's been marked as Exhibit H, your deposition. Could you turn to page 5 of that? Does this appear to be your deposition? Yes. What's it say on page 5, line 31? That the car was red. Now they've had to read their statement. You've established that they've made it. You've established that this document exists. And you've made them admit their mistake on the record. Now, they may try and say, well, I was wrong that day. But you've already established that that deposition is more accurate than what they said today. Because you say it's sooner in time. It's under oath. It was made without all these stressors of the trial, however you want to set that up. Now they're impeached. You can do it where you can, the quicker way, I don't think it is dramatic or as effective just from a pageantry effect, but you could just say, would it surprise you that in your deposition you said the car was red? No, that wouldn't surprise me. Because the car was red? Yes. That's a little quicker, but it reaches the same result. And really it's just a matter of what works stylistically, what you feel you can get to in the moment, how important the issue is. Because impeachment is also about value. Is it valuable to impeach this witness? Because witnesses will always have inconsistencies. inconsistencies with their reports, with their previous statements. Is it material? Does it matter? Is it worth taking the time to do that exercise to make that point? And if it is, great. If not, you can let little things go. Unless your theory is little things equal big things. An error here, an error there. Small errors that create a cumulative problem may be important. So it may be okay to focus on the minutia. But you'll know that going in, for the most part, or you'll get the feel for that when you start getting resistance from your witnesses. Because witnesses, they aren't going to want to agree with you to start with. That's the other reason why we start off easy. Get them saying yes. You did a report. Yes. You put all these important things. Yes. You've been trained at the academy. Yes. You were sleeping in your cross car this day, weren't you? Yes. People get used to saying yes. Work them through it. Start soft, build in, create that background, lock them into what you want, get them saying yes. It becomes harder for them to say no, because they shouldn't be able to disagree with you. You should be asking questions. You know the answer is yes. And if you don't get the yes, you go to your impeachment. That's why organization is so key, because you have to be ready for the wrong answer. I brought with me 2 examples today of things that I utilize. Everyone should do a trial notebook before you go into trial. Everyone should have one in every single case. Why? Organization can save you in the moment. Most of us don't have the opportunity to have co-counsel sitting next to us. We don't get the opportunity to have someone handing us the piece of paper, sorting through all our documents. I'm a horrible organizational person. I need all the help I can get, and if no one's there to help me, this is all the help. It has everything, the full case, start to finish, from the information, the motions in limine, witness list, jury instructions, affidavits, all the reports, everything you expect. I like to organize mine in chronological order. That's how I work. I think it's more helpful to me, but whatever thing works. You want everything in here, because this is yours. No one else gets this. This is your pretty little pet, and you're going to keep it, and you're going to love it, and you're going to squeeze it and massage it, and then you have your exhibits binder. This has all the exhibits. You have them in your notebook for you. This is where you have it for any other purposes, right? So if that witness says something different, you know it's not in the report. Do you have a copy of your report with you today? No, didn't bring it. Flip open to Officer Johnson's report. Click it open, say, would it help if I provide you with a copy of that? Sure. Click it out of your exhibits binder, lock it up, and then you know. Then you flip to your own, you look. I know where this line is. I'm ready for it, and I can direct them. Because I can say, turn to page 7 of your report. Would it help refresh your recollection to review that? Tell me when you're done. All right. Now, what do you say there in line 3? Car was red. Thank you, officer. But you can only do that if you are prepared for that. So your trial binder, your exhibits binder, they are your best friends. Because these are the things that can not only make you look like a lawyer, because you can walk around with it, and I was like, I like a trial. It must be very important. It'll save you. It'll help you. So get in the habit. Every case that goes to trial, it's just a trial binder and his best friend, Mr. Exhibits Binder, or Ms., or Mrs., or neutral. It's important, because if you don't know where to get it, you're going to spend too much time ruffling around. You're going to lose all your dramatic effect. You're not going to be able to confront the witness with the thing that you need to, and you're going to miss that opportunity, and then their wrong answer stands, and you don't get to put the right answer in your closing bag for later. All right. Style. Style is important, and again, this is where we deviate from direct examination. On direct examination, again, we talked about the witness is the star. Cross, you're the star. When you're doing direct, it's your witness answering questions for the jury. On cross, I fully believe it is you and the witness. You are talking to each other. Jury is in the background. You want to position yourself in a way that the jury can see the witness, that they can see the interaction, but you're not pandering to them. You are having a discussion between the two of you. And your style, your approach is going to depend on what you're trying to get from this witness. If your case theory is that these law enforcement officers screwed up because they were lazy or incompetent or malicious. You want to make that point through the way you conduct your investigation or examination. You want to develop those points and that style to bring that out. That might be a different approach if it's this witness, this officer did a really good job. He did such a good job. You're just like, you're awesome. You're a detective? How long have you been? Wow, that sounds like really super important and interesting. You must be really good at your job. Yeah, I am. And so you're being really good. If there had been this piece of evidence, you would have found it, wouldn't you? Yep. Since you didn't find it, it must mean it never existed. Right. And the good detectives that you cross a lot, by the time you start going down that path, they know what you're going to do and they can't stop you, and it's really fun. But they know, because you're going to treat that witness differently. You're going to make sure your approach is one of admiration, congeniality. Tailor your presentation to your witness and tailor it to your points. Everything in trial should be an intentional choice. So, if you want to appear mad, appear mad. If you want to appear frustrated, appear frustrated. But don't be mad, and don't be frustrated. And that can be hard. Trial is emotional. Trial is a process of stress and pressure and all these things. The more you can keep your mind neutral, you keep yourself calm, the more you get to choose how you're presenting and why, from witness to witness, from person to person. Maybe you want them to look like a jerk and you're just the nice guy asking questions. Maybe you want to make yourself look like the jerk and they're just an idiot. Give yourself the opportunity to do that by staying calm, staying neutral, and tailoring your performance style to your point you're trying to make with that particular witness, right? It's okay to be a little more bombastic in cross-examination. It's okay to be a little more showy, because not only is it helpful in making those points, your juries expect that. They want to see that. Part of our job, I think, in trial is to give the juries a little bit of what they expect and a little bit of what they don't expect, because it helps them feel like they're in the trial. You know, they're like, that guy must be really good. He was really going after that witness. Maybe, but you know, you give them a little bit what they want. Give the people what they want, a little bit, and then subvert their expectations. Because then sometimes you're like really nice. Like, I didn't know the cops were so friendly. I'm like, me and that cop are not friendly, but you don't know that because I didn't want you to know that. Or maybe I love this cop and they didn't know it, because that's your choice, right? Intentional actions through trial. Let's go here for a second. My favorite part of school, and anyone that grew up in an age where there was such thing as VHS, was when the teacher would roll in the giant square TV on the big stand, and then you're like, yeah, we're gonna watch a movie. That's awesome. So that meant that was gonna be a great day in class. So along that vein, we're gonna watch a clip of a movie. One of the great courtroom scenes that I think reflects a good cross-examination. And we'll talk about why in a moment. And since all the greatest things in movies can be learned through Westerns, we're going to watch a clip of the updated, several years ago, version of True Grit from 2010. Now I have no idea why this clip has what appears to be Arabic subtitles. That is not material to this program, it's just the only one I can find on YouTube. So, can everyone see that?
The subtitles are blocked.
Yeah, it's like they're backwards.
No, there was the Netflix logo.
Oh, okay.
There's not anymore.
All right,
Yeah,
perfect.
it's gone.
All right, ready?
What'd you do? Now we was U.S. Marshals.
That's a great direct.
hollered
What
out
did you
there.
do? What happened next? It's
He
the classic
talked to
prosecutor.
two boys. They raised an axe, commenced to cussing us and blackguarding this court.
What did you do then?
Well, backed away from the axe, trying to talk some sense into them. While this was going on, Cece, he edges over to the wash pot there behind the steam and picks up a shotgun.
Anyone needs
Potter
translation?
taken,
I speak
but it was
genuine
too late.
frontier gibberish, so I can translate.
Cece Wharton pulled out on Potter with one barrel and turned to do the same for me, and I shot him. The old man raised the axe, I shot him. Otis lit out, and I shot him. Cece Wharton and Aaron Wharton were dead when they hit the ground. Otis was just winged.
Did you find the jar with $120 in it?
Lady?
Sustained. What happened then?
Found the jar with $120 in it.
What became of Otis Wharton?
There it sits.
You may ask, Mr. Garvey.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Mr. Cogburn, in your 4 years as U.S. Marshal, how many men have you shot?
Never shot nobody that didn't have to.
Well, that was not the question. How many?
Shot or killed.
Let us restrict it to killed so that we may have a manageable figure.
About 12, 15, stopping men in flight, defending myself, etc.
Around 12, he says, or 15.
Impeachment coming up.
So many you cannot keep a precise count. I have examined the records and can supply the accurate figure.
Oh, I believe them 2 Wharton boys makes it 23.
And how many members of this one family, the Wharton family, have you killed?
Me did, or
Did you also shoot Dub Wharton, brother, and Cleet Wharton, half-brother?
Cleet was selling ardent spirits to the Cherokee. Come at me with a king bolt.
A king bolt? You were armed, and he advanced upon you with nothing more than a king bolt from a wagon tongue?
I've seen men bend a torp with nothing bigger than a king bolt. I defended myself.
Returning to the other encounter with Aaron Wharton and his 2 remaining sons, you sprang from cover with your revolver in hand,
I did.
loaded and cocked.
Oh, if it ain't loaded and cocked, it don't shoot.
And like his son, Aaron Wharton advanced against an armed man.
Oh, he was armed. He had an axe raised.
I believe you testified you backed away from Aaron Wharton.
That's right.
Which direction were you going?
I always go backwards when I'm backing up.
Very amusing. Now he advanced upon you much in the matter of Cleet Wharton, menacing you with that little old king bolt or rolled up newspaper or whatever it was.
Yes, sir. He commenced to cussing and laying about with threats.
And you were backing away. How many steps before the shooting started?
Oh, 7, 8 steps.
So, Aaron Wharton, keeping pace, advancing away from his campfire. 7, 8 steps. What would that be? 15, 20 feet?
I suppose.
Will you explain to this jury, Mr. Cogburn, why Mr. Wharton was found immediately by his washpot, one arm in the fire, his sleeve and hand smoldering? Did you move the body after you shot him?
Why would I do that?
You did not. Drag the body over to the fire, fling his arm in.
No, sir.
2 witnesses who arrived on the scene will testify to the location of the body. You do not remember moving the body. So it was a cold-blooded bushwhack while poor Mr. Wharton was tending to his campfire.
Objection! If that's where the body was, I might have moved him. I do not remember.
Why would you move the body, Mr. Cogburn?
Them hogs rooting around, they might have moved him. I do not remember.
All right.
You see this black box right here? Well, I'm going to show you something right now.
We don't need to see the Patriot black box. So, I believe that is a great cinematic example of the concepts we're talking about. You have 2 different styles, right? The direct, the attorney, we didn't see a lot of that, but he's not the show. Witness is the show. And then the defense attorney comes in, and he's on center stage. His movements, whether it's showing distance, whether it's the way he talks to the witness, and it's a good style, I think, too, is he comes right at the gate, letting that jury know what he thinks of the defendant, or the witness, excuse me, comes right at him with, how many men have you killed? Pretty strong way to start, right? If you can start strong like that, in that particular situation, it's great. And then he has the information. He has the number. You can impeach a witness without ever having to show them the piece of paper that's in your hand, right? Because they know. They know they're equivocating. They know that they're holding back and that It's only going to make him worse to keep on with it, right? Stylistically, everything he's doing is about making 3 points. What are his 3 points? 1, the bias of this witness towards the family, considering he shot and killed several members of it. 2, that the crime could not possibly have occurred in the manner in which he said, based on the positioning of the body. He uses his own words to do that. You said you backed away. Which direction? Well, I always back away when I'm going backwards. And he looks and smiles at the jury, and the witness thinks he's scoring points. He thinks he's doing great. Everyone's laughing, he's loving it. That's his words. If you back away, there's distance. If this man is approaching, he's also coming away from his original position. And it makes that fact that you say you shot him as he's approaching on you with an axe, yet he's found where you said you first encountered him. Arm still smoldering in the fire. The third point is the unreliability of the witness. When he, with such confidence, said, these guys tried to bushwhack us, and I shot this one, and I shot this one, and he was doing this, and I found a jar here, but all of a sudden, I don't remember. How did he get there? I don't know. You don't know. You seem to know everything else. How do you not know how the man you shot, supposedly pursuing you, ended up 20 yards away? And then he allows the witness an opportunity to make himself look ridiculous. Well, the hogs might have done it. I can count the number of things I can blame on hogs, and have a couple of things. So, his 3 points, though, are well met. Showing the bias, undercutting the very basics of the crime, and showing his own unreliability. Get in, get out. Great courtroom scene, good style, very performative, probably a little more performative than we're going to get to do in most cases, but always be ready for your, great moment on stage. All right, so, and I've sent out some materials that creates an outline of a lot of these concepts, talking about the performative aspects, the means to use impeachment, the uses of that, and really the bases of the whole thing, which is make sure you're asking good leading questions that you know the answer to. And be adaptive always. Be adaptive, but always be able to get back and always make sure you can make those points. The hardest part, what's the last thing I'm going to talk about here, is that last thing I talked about is when to get out. How do you know when you're done? There's a couple of ways. The first is if you made your points. If you did what you came to do, it's probably a good idea to be done, right? If you feel like everything you're doing can't get you to one of those points, move on, make the other, get out. If you find yourself completely stymied, it's better to end it than keep fighting through it, right? Don't give up right away. Use your tools, use your leading questions, use your impeachment materials, use those things, but if you're stuck, you're truly stuck, it's always okay to take a moment. And this is a hard thing in court. I'll say this just in general about court. We all feel like when we're standing up here and speaking, we are up here and it's taking forever. We feel like we've been in front of this jury, in front of this judge, with this witness forever. Every time we stop, we feel a strong need to keep talking because we want to fill the silence. We think everyone's looking at us, which most of them are and some of them aren't. And so we feel the need to fill the space, to fill the void. It is okay to pause. It is okay to take a moment. It's even okay to say, can I just have a quick moment? I need to talk to my client, talk to co-counsel, check my notes, or I just need a quick moment here. No one expects you to be up there constantly orating at any stage of the trial. You are a person, they are people, most of their greatest fear is public speaking. They will understand that. So give yourself the liberty to take those moments. So if you find yourself stuck, take a look, go to your notes, see if you've made the points you've got, keep track, understand which exhibits have come in, which haven't. Is there anything you needed more? Can you get there? It's okay to be like, I'm done, right? if you feel a witness is completely out of your control, that sometimes, maybe a lot of times, some witnesses are just better than us. First trial I ever did, Rule 9 intern at the public defender's office, DUI case. I had this great DUI case, safely off the roadway, all this field stuff, and I had worked up this incredible cross-examination thing. I'm just gonna get this officer to admit that he drinks and drives. I thought it was brilliant. So I get up there and say, all right, now, trooper, you go to weddings and things like that, right? Yes, I do. And you know, when you're at those weddings, you'll have a glass of wine or two, maybe. Nope, I'm Mormon. And I go, oh, okay, that's not working. And I try and go to my, but you've heard of people drinking wine at weddings, right? And then they go drive home, and that's not, so every time someone drinks, they can drive, right? Maybe I make the point, it's not quite as good. But then I start getting into the main part of my questions. And this trooper ends up being the training trooper, the head of the DUI emphasis thing. Barry Marcus was his name. He's done this forever. He's been in trial against way, way better lawyers than me. And he proceeds to eat my lunch. It was awful. It was a bloodbath. It was, maybe I should go do something else. Hopefully no one important saw this. It was awful. I couldn't help it. He was better than me. And sometimes they will be. Expert witnesses can do this. Experienced detectives can do this. Really sympathetic lay witnesses can do this. If you feel it slipping away, there's going to be an inclination. I can get this back. I can fight through this. I can turn the tides. Sometimes it's okay just to say thank you and sit down. Reconnect. Yes?
Kind of off the subject of what you're talking about, but it made me think of a question I wanted to ask you. So you're doing your cross, you're in the throes of it, and often you kind of don't want to lose the rhythm, and you kind of focus on your performance, but you also need to be remembering what the witness is saying to you.
Yes.
And so I find it difficult to do both, right? To be writing down what's going on, especially in a complete way, so that I can put it in my closing handbag or whatever. Do you have any tips for that?
A couple, and that's a very good point, because once you feel like you can either be rhythm or you can be listening, but you have to be listening. Just like we talked about in direct, you need to know the answer, A, to know if you got it in, and B, to make sure that they actually said what you needed them to say. Part of ways to do that is slowing down. Sometimes when we feel we're in a rhythm, it just means we're going quick, and we're going quicker than we need to. So the first thing is consider, can I be slowing down? Am I getting this information, right? Am I getting to these points? And part of that's just reflecting in the moment and saying, okay, am I really in rhythm or am I just going fast? Because fast isn't always good, and fast isn't always rhythmic, because you go too fast, your jury's gonna miss everything. That's the first part. A little checklist, right next to you, or points, or I send out some witness analysis sheets as well, where you have the point you need to make, and you need to, if you get that line, and you know that's what you need, write it down, right underneath that. So now you have it. And even if it's just a yes to the question, you know, so that not every question is the groundbreaking one, but the ones you need, it's okay to take a moment, write it down. That action itself may actually signal to the jury, ooh, that was important, right? Especially if you're not doing that for everyone. And knowing where your points are and being able to check them off is helpful. And then the final part of that is, before you sit down, check back in with yourself and see, okay, did I make these points? Can I say right here by looking at the sheet right now where I made these? And if you can't, it's okay to say, now we may have already talked about this, but, and go back to it. If you can't find it, it's okay to check in and go back. And if they say objection, ask and answer, and you can be like, I don't remember what they said. You know, but whatever you need to do to make sure you can check in with yourself, so you don't just feel like you did this great blistering cross and you sit down, put your hands back behind your head, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, didn't get that in. So, because you may not get another chance, right? That is your cross. There may be a redirect, most likely. You may or may not get a recross. So you have to be comfortable that when you sit down, just like you are in direct, you have to prove your case there. You have to feel the same way about your cross-examination. So the first part is just think about whether you're actually in rhythm or if you're just going fast. The other aspect of that is how do you organize your points? Do you have something to connect them to? And the final thing is check back in with yourself. Sometimes you can do it under the auspices of checking in with your client, with co-counsel. I think that's completely appropriate. Give yourself a moment to let the heat of the moment settle down.
Sorry, can I suggest one more thing on this topic?
Please do.
Don't be afraid of silence. Especially if you're in rhythm and you get something critical, then taking a moment to be silent or to write it down signals that that's important because you've now broken your rhythm and you can hold your audience's attention while still being silent.
Trial moves pretty fast. You gotta stop every now and then and look around. Yes, Matt.
I also think it's good, the yes/no questions. I mean, you start off by saying, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions that can be answered yes or no. And then the first question, he just runs off, and I just let him go. I look at the jury.
Yeah.
So when he finally finishes, so the answer to my question was yes. And you did it a couple times, jury says this guy's an idiot.
Yep. And especially in those early questions, because those are usually the innocuous ones, right? You went to the academy, right? I went to the academy in 2018, and I was voted best ping pong player in the entire academy team, and yada yada yada. Yeah, and then you're not letting them run on something that may hurt you, but you are signaling. Everything's signaling, just like we saw in our True Grit example. He's signaling to the jury throughout the process how he feels about this guy, and then he helps the jury feel the same way. It's exactly like that. A quick look to the jury, a quick look to the judge. Use that with your objections as well. So the last part of cross-examination is the opportunity to potentially recross. Recross is not a given. It's really judge-dependent, it can be trial-dependent, it can be time-dependent. So you may not always get an opportunity to recross, but if you have that opportunity, take it if you have a reason to do so. We all want the last word. And in that manner, you can get recross, redirect, re-recross, re-redirect, redirect, re-recross, direct, and realize you haven't got anything out of that except the last word. The dangers of a recross is you may ask that question too far. And it's coming right after a redirect where they've gotten to, ideally, for the state, hone in on some of the things you brought out in that cross-examination. You're giving that officer, that witness, that expert another chance to correct themselves. Because when you're asking the initial questions on cross, they don't know where you're going. By the time they've been redirected, the prosecutor has signaled to them through their questioning what they're trying to clean up. Now they're on to you. Or you may be able to get away with a trick once. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, wait, other way around. It's gotta be your bull, now that I think
Can't
about
get
it.
fooled again.
So, you may not get another shot at that. So you need to be mindful that you're recrossing with a purpose. Again, recross is a response to redirect. You don't get to ask the questions you forgot to ask before. You can try, but you might fail. So go in with a purpose, and it's gotta be even more narrowly tailored, okay? Because if you're gonna get into this back and forth, a whole nother that, you may undercut all the good work you did there. So for recross, have something you need, get it, get out. And it's okay to just be okay. Because it's not your witness, and it's not your case.
Also, don't be afraid on redirect to object to outside of scope, because it's not a chance for them to repeat.
Yep.
And then when you get up and do your recross, say, you just testified a minute ago, blah, 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 but, and then go into your question,
Yep.
then you're clearly within scope.
Yep, and that is a great thing to think about when we talk about, because it's a great objection after you're done with your cross-examination. Because they don't get to go back and redo their case, they can only be responsive to you. Just as your cross-examination can only be responsive to them. And so that line, you testified about blank, is creating a situation where you're gonna make almost anything you say next part of the thing you get to respond to. If he's talking about the car was red, blue, or that, you testified the car was blue, but it was sunny that day, right? Objection, outside the scope of direct. Well, Your Honor, his judging the color could have been affected by whether it was sunny or not. Anyways, you should be able to try and frame everything within a response to what occurred on direct in the same way that you're doing that with recross, and being mindful of when the prosecutor tries to redirect their original direct, and be mindful of that objection practice, because it's a very good one to think about. Yeah, so get in, get out, be done, and be okay with being done, because we all want the last word. You don't always need it. It doesn't always help you. Sometimes it helps you a lot. I had a trial that I was doing last year where our theory was the witness was high on methamphetamine when they allegedly saw my client kidnapping, holding, assaulting, strangling this woman at this hotel. And we did get her to admit she was on methamphetamine that day. She had used that day. The prosecutor got up on his redirect, and for some reason he said, well, couldn't you have just been jacked up on adrenaline? Just really excited? That was his question. I was like, there's no way this is happening. He sits down, I get to go up for my recross. The prosecutor just talked to you about you being on adrenaline. Could you have been jacked up on methamphetamine? Yes. Sit down, win the trial, I'll go home. It was great. It's just like, because sometimes they give you those little nuggets, but it was one question. They laid it for me on a silver platter and I jumped all over it. But had it been something more innocuous, I probably wouldn't have taken that opportunity because it wouldn't have been necessary at that point. So be mindful of the opportunity, but don't try and force it when it's not there. All right. That is general breakdown of the cross-examination. You do have some materials that expound on this a little bit more. Any questions at this time? Yes?
I know you're not supposed to ask questions you don't know answers to, and all of this is built on the interview that you do with the witness. I've had issues lately with prosecutors where when we're in the witness interview, they're telling the witness not to answer things, or telling me I can't ask things, or interrupting and feeding the witness information or things. Like, how do you handle that and then be prepared for?
So you handle that in the interview by first admonishing the prosecutor and just saying, hey, listen, if we can't do this as a meaningful interview, and you are not the person on trial here, you are not their attorney, you do not get to interject for them, I'm not being harassing, these are not inappropriate questions, we can do this as a deposition. And then if they stop, great, you get your interview done. And if they persist, just say this is not a meaningful opportunity to interview this witness, we'll be requesting a deposition, go, fill out your paperwork, put that information in your certificate, and then they gotta explain to the judge, you know, and then you get them up on a stand, and then they're under oath, and then you can do it there. Depositions are rarely available in criminal cases, but they are there, and there is an option for that. Prosecutors should not be interjecting into witness interviews. It's not their client. You need to have a chance to meaningfully ask your questions. And I try to, in my witness interviews, put the witness at ease and say, hey, listen, I'm going to talk to you about some things that may be uncomfortable, and just because we're talking about it today, it doesn't necessarily mean that it comes in a trial. So if you think something I'm asking it doesn't matter, or we shouldn't get into, just know I'm just trying to understand the situation. You try and nice person them through it, and sometimes that works and it calms everyone down and you get what you need. But if you're feeling a lot of resistance, if you're getting resistance from the witness to answer questions, you can always bring up that, hey, we can just do this via deposition, we don't have to do this today. Just indicate this isn't meaningful, this is not a witness interview, this is a prosecution coaching interview, and that's not the same thing. You know, and it could be just the prosecutor doesn't know, but it could be that they are trying to manipulate that.
You can also bring all that up on cross. You can say, hey, you know, when you talked to the police officer at the time of the thing happened, you didn't have a victim advocate there, you didn't have a prosecutor there, you know. You just told the cop X, Y, and Z, and then when you had the prosecutor and the victim advocate in the room, I asked you the same question, and you didn't want to answer.
It becomes part of your cross. It helps to undercut that. It starts to make the prosecutor, if they want this witness to tell the story, why wouldn't they let him tell it? You know, and so it can work to your advantage. And in the kind of off of your question, the idea of don't ask the question you don't know the answer to. There are moments of calculated risk. I saw Kevin Griffin did this. It was this beautiful, brilliant moment that could have been horrific. But we have a client on trial editor. They bring in the witness that was living in the garage at the time, and he just seemed like the nicest guy, but looked like an accountant, this and this and this. And Griffin gets to his last question. He goes to sit down. He stops in this Kevin Griffin way. Most of you don't know, but he's amazing. He does this and he goes, so how long have you used methamphetamine? And the guy goes, oh, all my life. And you were using it when you were living in that garage? Oh yeah, tons. We didn't know the answer to that question. It was just based on the fact is, why would this guy be living in a garage? It was just enough to give Kevin enough to feel like he could ask the question he didn't know the answer to, and it paid off major dividends. So we do take calculated risks. Don't take too many, but it's all right. Every rule can be broken, right? We know the rules, so we know how to, when we need to deviate from them, to do the best work we can. Other questions?
Well, one other thing, this is really sweet. If the prosecutor wants to bring a witness back for rebuttal,
Yes.
you can ask for an offer of proof and let the witness get on the stand first, and then ask for the offer of proof, and then tell the judge, that's not rebuttal, that's repetition. And if the judge sustains your objection, the sweetest thing is watching that witness walk back to their seat.
That is a Matt Hargett original moment, by the way. That's not just a metaphor, that actually happened. No, it's great. I mean, that's why understanding, ultimately, everything we're doing, the more you can be familiar with the rules, the things behind it, so you know when's cross-appropriate, when's redirect appropriate, what areas can you get into in rebuttal. For those of you that don't know, I know you all know this, but rebuttal is when you put on your case and then they want to recall a witness to rebut something that your witness says. A lot of attorneys try and use that as an opportunity to re-emphasize their case, or even just disagree by saying what they've already said. It's not rebuttal. It has to be something to be a direct response to something the jury hadn't heard, that they hear on your direct examination, and then the prosecution brings up again. Or, even through impeachment, there may be an opportunity where you impeach a witness and then they try and call a rebuttal witness to rebut something that witness said. So there's different ways to use it, but just be aware of when it's appropriate, when it's not. So it can give you those great moments where knowing is half the battle. So anything else? All right, next week we will be closing with closing, and look forward to seeing you all there, and thank you for our studio audience for your viewing and attention. Thank you.